Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Pan Vibes. Dr. Richard Tang Yuk and myself, Farid Ali, will be hosting the Shell Invaders Steel Orchestra this afternoon with no other than arranger extraordinaire, Mr. Arddin Herbert, joining us. Mr. Herbert, welcome to our program. Thank you for taking the time to be with us. And I know that this is a busy season and a busy time, given that the semi-finals is on Sunday. How are you doing?
I'm doing excellent. I am totally blessed. I am always highly favored, and I'm ready to go.
How's your blood pressure and your nerves?
Uh,
Given
I don't check that during the season because I don't want to see the measurements, the results. So I don't check that at all. But I I am doing fine. I am actually really encouraged by the band's performance and the total effort that I've seen thus far.
you are one of those arrangers that have spent years upon years. This is, I believe, your 20th year arranging for the Shell Invaders Steel Orchestra. It shows that you are embedded in their DNA not only as an arranger, but from our previous dialogues, you were involved as a player also, and you came through the ranks through the years. What is it like working in that culture that you're in, that invaders culture? What is the atmosphere like in a panorama season? How do you all relate to each other? How do you
Well,
keep chemistry alive there?
well, there is a certain familiarity, especially in my case, because I started when I was 9. Um, and I migrated when I was 19. Did my degree in music as well as business, and came back and started to arrange for the Shell Invaders from 2005. So this being my 20th year is really well. I mean, every Panorama is special, but it's even more special because it is a milestone, and I've been fortunate, as I said, as a young player, um, you know, being mentored and guided by who are now considered the elders, and I am, in full circle doing that to the young players of the Shell Invaders, so that there is that sort of continuity that I'm sort of born where I am seeing myself as bridging that gap with the elders, the young players that played at my time. We still have a few a few of them, and then we have a lot of talented, extremely committed, loyal, dedicated young individuals in Invaders. Those youths, they are fabulous. As a matter of fact, I want to take this opportunity to congratulate them on their second place at the youth Panorama. I definitely want to shout out the arranger, Mr. Rashawn Williams, very talented. Their manager, Mrs. Atia Brito, their captain, Miss Shaniqua Nurse, and all the parents and everyone who has really helped to really ensure that they were able to, go to the Panorama with all the necessary resources. They were fabulous.
Tell us something about your song of choice. What is the process you as an arranger engage when a decision has to be made with regard to a song of choice? Because sometimes when we chat with bands, we hear the process is different. Some they consult the players, find out how the players feel about a particular song. You are musically trained and you would have a musical eye, a mind. Is there something in a song that you're looking for that you work with, whether it be a blueprint that you're looking for in a song when you're choosing your piece, or when you
Okay,
come to the band with a piece in your heart?
okay. So in the Shell Invaders Steel Orchestra, we have what's called a CAS system, CAS. So we compile a bunch of the songs based on suggestions and feedback from players, from management, even from supporters. So we compile, then we assess. We start to look and say, okay, which is really more suitable? Is it popular enough? Does it have enough thematic material and motivic material? Are the progressions conducive to the steel pan and the competition? So we try to assess that, and then we select. We start to break it down. Okay, so if say we start with 10 songs, we start to say, okay, we're gonna eliminate this, we're gonna eliminate that, and we come down to 2 or 3, and then we put them down on the on the pan, and we kind of figure out what really sits well, what songs best. We look for the that energy, that vibe from the players, and then we make a final decision.
Dr. Tang Yuk, Mr. Herbert is speaking of thematic material,
Motivic.
motivic. I think this is where you come in.
Well, no, it's very clear. There's a very clear and concise discussion. I'm glad you asked him about the choice of songs. So I just want to explore that a little bit further with you, Mr. Herbert. So this obviously involves a lot of work if you're going to select 2 or 3 songs and say, let's put them down and listen to it. I'm sure that even when you deciding a little excerpt of this song to put on, you already know in your mind what is going to work best, don't you?
Yeah, I pretty much have a bias to which song sometimes that I would prefer.
Okay, so we're not talking, but let's put bias aside. Of course, everybody has particular preferences, but let's say I'm just thinking about myself. If I was arranging a piece for choir, I would already know if somebody gave me 3 choices and said, which of these will work? I don't have to try it out in a rehearsal. And I would imagine it's the same for you because you have a lot of experience. You already know. Now, if we're going to say, which of these songs would the players take to, that's a different issue. Because what you might think, you as the arranger might yield some fantastic ideas. The players, this is an interesting topic for you. Thank you for asking. The players may not take to it immediately. I'm sure you've had this experience where you put down something, in your mind, this is just one section, and you have all these ideas, but you're just trying it out. But the initial reaction may not be so enthusiastic. But if you pursued it, a month later, they're saying this is the best thing we ever played. Is that true?
Well, I have had that experience. Yeah. Definitely. Sometimes as the musician that is hired to do the job, I understand certain things that say the layman may not. But I would say the flip side is that I can produce or I can create whatever I believe is superb or what should be the standard. But if that isn't accepted by the masses, then, and especially for a competition, then is it really worth it? So I always try, and this is why I said I have a bias. So inherently, I go in with a bias, but I ensure to be objective enough when I'm putting on the piece of music to not embellish anyone more than the other.
Make this more appealing so they will choose what you want.
Right. So
I mean, yeah. So yeah, but it's interesting because it raises the issue of you're the artistic leader, you're the arranger, and you have your vision. So well, let me ask the question this way. What you describe, the method you describe is very democratic, right? Where you're consulting with supporters, you're consulting with administration, you're consulting with membership. But does this consultation sometimes hinder your creativity? Would you like to just be able to choose something and nobody put up any objection? They trust you, you have a track record, you've been doing it for decades. Why can't all the constituents just trust the leader?
Well, I think the system is one of trust. The
Okay,
same way they trust me, I trust them. So, so there have been times when, say, a song was suggested, not because of its musical content, but because of its popularity. And unfortunately for me, I can articulate enough to explain to those that are in that camp why that song may not work best for
right,
us. Um,
right,
but in fact, I mean, we have a wonderful relationship, where I try to get buy-in from everyone because,
right,
you at the end of the day, they're all stakeholders. Excuse me, and they are shareholders, so that they must be involved, in critical aspects of that decision making.
right. Okay, okay. And so this particular peace blessing, how long did it take you to arrange the whole thing, roughly?
Okay, I used to begin arranging from the time it started in the panyard, or arranging from the time I decided, or it was decided, that would be the song.
From the moment you decided this would be the song?
Okay, I would say, mm, 2 to 3 weeks max. Yeah.
2 to 3 weeks, that's all?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, wow,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
that's amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
You see, once the song is decided on, I live with it, morning,
Right,
noon, night.
right,
Um, and start getting sketches. I would start to notate certain things, certain ideas that I do not want to lose.
right,
Um, and I will go in the panyard, and we have a wonderful group, of the, section leaders or individuals chosen to learn the music by rote, and I would start to distribute the music to them. And there are times when what I created, what I thought was so good, um, isn't as great as, say, a mistake made by one of those individuals. So I say, wait,
huh,
who played that? Some of them are very shy and coy. Like, I say, play it again. And it's like,
right,
So it actually evolves. And that's the sort of trust and buy-in that we have. We have that relationship where,
right.
I am not so rigid to just stay with what I have created, but to accept ideas and suggestions, whether it's deliberate or accidental, into the piece of music.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you're constantly living with the piece and you jot down ideas. Do you find yourself getting up in the middle of the night with an idea and writing it down?
I find myself not sleeping, so there's no getting up. There is no sleep.
Okay.
but 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 yes, there are times I just wake up and like, okay, and I will make a quick recording as to not, yes. So yes, that proverbial panjumbi is
Yeah.
always lurking.
Yeah. Great. So, I've always wondered, and maybe some of our listeners might be wondering this as well. Have you ever put down a passage which was extremely difficult? You knew it was difficult, and the players were having trouble with it, and time is running out, and the competition is approaching, and you decide, okay, let's cut that and do something else. Has that ever happened in the past?
All the time, of
All the
course.
time. Oh my
Certainly.
goodness. Okay. So,
Certainly.
well, thank you for being honest. I had no
Certainly.
idea.
Yes. You see, and one of the things, I guess, that experience has taught me is that you must always understand and work with your available resources. So
Right.
I may want to create such a difficult passage that is full of so much technical challenges, and
Yeah.
sometimes forget the level of some
Yeah.
of the players, because again, if one player can't get it and one player makes that mistake, the other 124 would suffer. So
Right.
there are many times that I would say, you know what, let's revisit something, and the revisitation sounds so much more better and effective than that original so-called difficult passage.
Right. Now, so when you let's say you decide, I just want to explore this further. When you decide, okay, we've been working on this difficult passage, and you make the decision to let's substitute something else. Is it demoralizing to the band when you say that's, or are they relieved? Thank-
Relieved is certainly the word that I would use, but there are some players that are always up to the challenge, but they do understand, hey, for the greater good, this is the the best path forward.
Yeah, yeah. I would imagine there's some players who say, no, let's keep trying it. We'll get
Yeah,
it. We'll get it. Yeah.
yeah, definitely,
Don't want-
definitely.
Yeah. But I suppose I would imagine then with experience, you pretty much know what the level is and what they're capable of doing within the short time that you have, right? So you probably don't encounter that too often.
No, I don't encounter that often at all, but I always try to challenge the
Right.
players so that even sometimes, and I'm saying this out publicly now, so I don't know how effective it is going to work with them again. Sometimes I deliberately challenge them,
Yeah.
deliberately. Try that. Let's try it. Knowing that what, time is I'm short, but at least for the season they would have been challenged enough to get better.
Right. And probably I would guess that there's a certain contingent of your band that if they weren't challenged, they might lose interest.
Probably, yeah, probably.
So it's kind of a balance, we have to balance keeping everybody challenged and focused, but not making it too straightforward so they feel, well, I don't really need to come to practice tonight, I have that down already.
Well, if it was that, if that were to be the case where players say, that I don't need to come practice, then more than likely they won't be playing, because we have an attendance criteria
Oh,
to ensure that the players, I don't need to come. So in Invaders, we look at your proficiency and your regularity in terms of our selection process.
fantastic. That's fantastic. So that means, do you, when you get to the competition, does that mean that you have more players than you need and you have to make a selection, or is it kind of self-selecting as the process goes?
Well, I don't believe in the phrase more players than you need. I would say there are more players than the competition allows.
Okay, that's what I meant.
Yeah,
More
I
players
know,
than
but I'm just yes, I think that's the case for every band,
yeah,
especially in terms of the large band
yeah,
category. There is an overabundance of players that come to your Panyard, and the selection process is always a tough one. It's
yeah,
always, every year it is tough. You sometimes you do not select a person, and you better have the evidence base for selecting person A versus person B, because it's a Panyard, it's carnival is a bacchanal,
yeah,
and sometimes if that's not handled properly, fairly, objectively, you can run into problems. Again, every band is different, but certainly there are selection. There's a selection process for the overabundance of players.
Yeah.
Allow me to
So,
ask, do you get involved? Do you, Dr. Tang Yuk, is in keeping what he just said. Do you, as a ranger composer, get involved in the selection of players to perform at the different levels? I know that in some bands they say that I am musical director, I'm a ranger composer. My job is to prepare the band. A section leader or somebody else would get involved in selecting the 120 players. Do you actually get involved in that way? You take yourself out, or you get what?
Right.
What do you do?
Right. So the responsibility of the section leaders, is to say, hey, so I would say I need 40 tenors, I need 12 double tenors, 18 double seconds, and give the list. And then the section leaders, based on the criteria I explained earlier, based on the technical proficiency, performance ability, and regularity, would then come up and say, okay, these are the individuals that in fact we have selected. If for some reason a section leader has a challenge or problem and they approach me, I would give my very objective advice. But to say that I get involved in this one, no, I leave that.
So you don't drop a player. You would say I need 40 tenor players, and the dropping is in the hands of the selection. Let me not say the word
right.
drop.
I was not going to say we don't drop, we select. Yes. So that is part of the responsibility and function of the section leaders in Invaders, to select based on that criteria.
Mr. Herbert, thank you for that explanation. And let's go back to something that you alluded to when we started this conversation about selection of players. You said not the number of players, too many players that I need, but what the competition allows. So I want to explore that with you. If we think about it from a 30,000-foot level, and you have players who are competent, who want to play, what is the rationale behind limiting the number of players that can play in the competition?
Well, I can't speak to that rationale because I
What do
am
you
not a part. Right.
Okay, but
Right.
what do you think they're thinking, and what are your thoughts? I mean, it seems to me, as a layperson in the panel, if you have enthusiastic people who are skilled and are putting in the time, don't we want to have more people involved? I'm not saying take any and everybody, and they don't have the skill, or they haven't had regularity in the Panyard. But I'm talking about here, we are arbitrarily cutting off at a certain number because this is what the competition rules say. But I'm questioning the competition rules. I'm saying, why are we turning away people rather than getting more people involved? What are your thoughts about it?
Well, I mean, I would go with 200 players, 250 players if the rules allowed it. But again, I don't know the rationale. There have been discussions. I have heard individuals say one of the reasons why that may be so is because of the remittance or the financial support that is given to the players, so that they limit the amount of players per band, so that players can be given their remittance. That's one reason that I've heard.
So let me rebut that point. Right. So isn't that up to the individual band management administration? So the prize money is the prize money. It's up to the band how it's distributed. And if they want to distribute it to 110 players rather than 100 and take a lower cut for the band itself, that's up to them.
Well, so I'm speaking about the direct government remittance checks to players and not the prize money.
Oh, okay.
So, and again, conversely, there have been some band management that the decision they make based on who they pay and why they pay them can come under scrutiny. But again, I don't know why 125 is the limit for large bands. Maybe because the size of, well, it's not the size of the stage. I actually don't know, and I can't speak to it informally. So maybe that is a question that can and should be asked if in fact bands believe they have the necessary resources and the players to facilitate that. Whether it goes up to 150, or again, I don't know specifically about that rule and why is that rationale.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Tang Yuk, one of the concerns that we perhaps need to be mindful of, there are bands that are struggling to get players, struggling to make that 120 quota. That may not be an Invaders issue, but I've been noticing in the newspapers bands advertising or having auditions and advertising that you come on certain days in order to audition to get into that band. And when you go to the different panels and you have conversations, and you don't need to have conversations when you look at the instruments and the players standing behind those instruments. There are bands, I can't call names, but there are bands struggling to fill those racks. So
well, I mean, like anything else in the business community or the business industry, sometimes you struggle to attract certain talent. So certain bigger corporations and businesses would be able, based on their brand, their experience, their resources, would be able to get certain talents, while probably a mom and pop shop, a small business, may suffer a bit. Let me also say, I applaud every single band that puts out an ad in newspapers or has auditions, because if in fact we're going for the traditional job, those ads are placed in the newspaper saying, hey, we have an opening, send your CV or resume. And I think most steel bands need to do that, because sometimes there's so much players believe, oh, well, this band don't need anybody, or this band don't need anybody. So I applaud and would encourage bands to say, hey, we are looking for players. Again, like any job, hey, we're looking for a CEO, we're looking for a CFO. So we need to start saying, hey, we are open for business. We need talent as well.
Okay, so I want to follow up on this question, Fareed. So Fareed, when you said quota of 120, is that the maximum or is that the minimum?
125 players, are you talking about?
yeah.
You said, Fareed
Yes,
said, so 125 is the maximum.
Maximum, yes.
Is there a minimum?
I think the minimum is 100. I believe it's 100, yeah.
100.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but here's the question, right? So what does it matter if it's 115 or 125? Because it's not so much quantity as quality and cohesion. Because Mr. Herbert, just adding players a section doesn't mean it's going to be just as good. Even if they're skilled, it may take longer for precision in the execution. It will affect the balance of the band relevant to other sections. So, so I just want to question why is it a range? If a band wants to go with 98 players, what's wrong with that? It's up to them. They know they're competing against a band that may have 125, but if they choose to do that, it's up to them. Shouldn't it be up to them? Why is there a limit on the lower end?
I can't
It,
speak to what the limit is, but I can tell you that an additional 25 players makes a big difference in terms of the overall sound.
right.
You are able to have some sections provide more clarity. So I would choose the larger number. I mean, I have a range for bands that were smaller than some larger bands in terms of different categories, and they have been beaten. So I think it really comes down to the arrangement and the execution of that arrangement. Um, it always boils down to the players and their ability to execute and express the intent of the arranger, of the composer. Um, but again, in terms of the numbers, I'll leave that to the administrators and the individuals that, in terms of sound, whether 98 makes so much less of a difference than say 125.
Okay, fair enough. I wanted to ask you a question about arranging, if I may. So when you start to arrange a piece, you decided on the song. Are you thinking like of an overall structure even before you put down anything? Are you thinking about um, do you map out a harmonic structure even before you start putting down individual parts?
Well, yes. I mean, I certainly have a roadmap based on say a template that say I may have used, or right. So definitely, and as I spoke about the sketches earlier, that's part of it. So that I will think, okay, um, whether the song is 1625, I'm gonna say, okay, I'm going to start to think, okay, for my reharmonization, what would I do with that? So I'll say, you know
So
what, and
let's just stop for a second to explain to let's just stop for a second to explain 1625, because I could just hear some people out there saying, what are they talking about? So 1625, Mr. Herbert is referring to the chords progression, the 1 chord followed by the 6 chord, followed by the 2 chord, followed by the 5 chord. So it's a very common type of harmonic progression. So it refers to the harmonic sequence of chords. We get sometimes feedback on this program that we use technical terms and people don't understand what we're talking. So I just wanted to clarify that. Okay, go ahead, sir.
excellent. Okay, so I started saying, okay, for my reharmonization, what am I gonna do? So, and then I said, okay, where am I gonna put that reharmonization section? Am I gonna put it in the first verse solo? Am I gonna leave it for the change key? Am I gonna put it where the minor goes? So I definitely have that sort of roadmap. From the time the song is selected, and not just in terms of the harmonic progression. I look at the thematic or the motivic material and say, okay, for the jam, I'm going to take this motif and I'm going to work it in the basis. Then, while the tenors are playing, probably that same motive, I'm going to let the middles have a call and response. So it's always a process of, okay, where am I going to put this? Where I'm going to put that? I like to liken my arrangement or my role as an arranger as being an interior designer. All the furniture is there, and I'm coming and saying, okay, I'm gonna put the couch here, I'm gonna put a lamp there, and I'm saying, you know what, I need a little more light here. So I'm always shifting things around until the day of the viewing. Okay, bam, that's it. And even on that day, someone like, can I just move that around a bit. So it's that process that's always evolving. It's just always there, always growing.
Right. Well, thank you for that description. One of the things that I admired when I listened to your arrangement of Blessing, I love how you used like a little melodic fragment, and after it was repeated in the context of the song, then you just took that 3-note fragment and did it in a sequence or a run repetitively, so it didn't follow the exact meter of the measure, but after you play the entire sequence, it works itself out. I think it's brilliant. So, and I'm sure the players love doing that. I'm sure
Love it. They
now
love it.
when they do, let's say we're in a common time, but the pattern is ta 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 ta. Obviously, they have to really hold on to that rhythm.
Rhythm, yeah.
Maybe if they're thinking 1, 2, 3, 4, they'll get confused. But if they hold on to the pattern, it's going to work itself out maybe in 2 bars. I don't know how many bars. I'd have to go back and listen to it. But
And right, so that's so interesting that the way some players process a sequence like that, some of them are able to count every sequence, pa-da-da, ba-da-da, 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 and so that they will count it. Some just say they can't count at all. If you try to make them count, they are going to mess up. They just feel it, so that they would feel that meter, that 1, 2, 3, 4, pa-da-da, pa-da, ba-da-da, ba-da-da, ba-da-da. So it's so interesting to see how each player or group, groups of players are able to interpret, process, and analyze it so that they can learn it on their terms, but in keeping with the intent of the arrangement.
yeah, interesting. Yeah. Well, we know this as teachers, right? Everybody processes information in a different way. And
Correct.
the skill of teaching is finding a way to connect with the person who's learning. Yeah. But that's quite admirable what you do there. So I enjoyed listening to that a lot. When you work on the ending, is the ending something that you just think about, you try different things, or is it kind of set even as you're working on some other section of the piece?
The ending always comes after. Okay, so the ending comes after the piece is finished. Now that sounds like, well, duh, but there's sometimes that I do the intro while I'm doing the jam, etc. So it's some strange thing that the ending comes or is created at the end of the piece. Now there are times that I may have an idea for an end and say, you know what, I'm gonna take this approach, but the majority of times I try to have the entire piece and then look for a suitable ending to that entire conversation.
It doesn't sound strange at all, because I would think also the introduction, you might want to experiment with different things, or a certain idea comes to you from working in the development section, and you think this would be great if I put this in a sequential pattern in the introduction. They're not going to hear it till we get to the development, but they will figure out. So I think, when I write music, the beginning and the end always comes last.
Yeah, correct. It is like you're going to introduce a speaker. What you need first is to have the body of work or knowledge of what that speaker did, so that's the body, right? The context, so that I say, okay, based on this is how I can introduce, so that you normally won't have an introduction or introduce a person if you don't know what they have done, what they have accomplished, or what they're supposed to deliver or present. So yeah, so it works like I'm not.
Yeah. So let me ask you about you mentioned in your opening statement that you're mentoring a lot of younger um, pianists, perhaps young arrangers, very talented and committed people. Is there any kind of structured succession plan? Not that we want you to go anywhere, but I know bands are always, I think some bands are always thinking ahead. Okay, we should start training this next leader, the next arranger, the next band captain, drill master, whatever, section leaders. So on all levels of the band, is there any kind of structured succession plan?
Okay, so what Invaders has, we have started our work on our PDI. That's our player development initiative, and encompassing in encapsulated in them that is that very sort of succession planning. No, it's not named succession planning, but it is providing the tools and resources necessary for those individuals that want to go on to be arrangers, that want to go on to be a performing pan musician. So we do have the structure in place so that if at any point anything happens from the arranger's perspective or the section leader perspective, there is someone or someone's to be able to just fall in quite easily, so that there will be a seamless transition.
Wonderful. That's great to hear. Farid?
When I go to the pan yards, I tend to go to the different yards and try to listen and try to go at different points in the yard to hear the music. I don't want to sit down in the bleachers and stay one place all night. I try to talk to persons around, senior heads, people who seem to know a little bit more than me. Um, you often hear resonating people say, and they're losing the melody in the middle of the song. So sometimes I ask arrangers in a private conversation, what's the science behind what you're doing? When you hear people making comments, are you listening to what your enthusiasts who come to the yard, what they are hearing, and try to get some feedback, or you are in your own space and true to what you want to do? Sometimes they respond to me and say, so you're not hearing the melody coming from the middle pans? That they say my melody is always there, my melody, I ain't lose no melody. The middle pans playing the melody while the front line pans taking us on a journey. So how do you approach staying true to the original melody, or true to the song that you're interpreting through the pan, and not lose the essence of what the musician who put together the song, what the blueprint he was using? Is it that
Well,
you off on a journey with the tenor pan and let your middle pans carry that melody, or do you see this losing the melody thing, that the lay person in the pan, that you know nothing, saying, well, them lost the melody?
okay,
How do you approach
so
that?
right, so that I would never say that a lay person don't know nothing.
Yeah.
What I would say is, sometimes the way we present it to the lay person does not allow them to hear it as clearly as they may want to. I have heard that too in some of my arrangements, where's the melody, and this is not from the lay person. This is sometimes from judges. Okay, so now depending on the arranger. Now I am a very layered arranger. I have multiple things going on at the same time. Probably something five or six lines going on at the same time. That would be my preference. But again, we have to remember that we're in a competition. This is not just some performance or a festival. We have to remember what what are the dynamics for a competition. And again, this isn't about saying, well, this is how I am doing it. And no, the competition requires sometimes that you adapt to certain rules, unwritten rules. Whether you like it or not, that's what competition does. If in fact you don't want to modify and change some things, if you want to be a purist, maybe competition is not for you, maybe. But as an arranger, we should stay again. Every arranger is different, and if an arranger wants to be true to his or her creation, by all means do it. But we can't now sit and say, well, the melody is there if it's not being heard, or if the embellishment is sometimes losing the audience and or the adjudicators. There must be a balance. So no, I am not going to tell an arranger how to do that. That's not my position at all. But we must be mindful, again, if we are in a competition, and the fact that the judge's decision is final, we can't argue after the fact that, hey, you said that I took you on a journey where we wasn't supposed to go, after the fact. Now, if there was some sort of recourse where you can appeal a decision, maybe that could work. But the way the rules are now, whatever the judges say is final. So again, you have to be mindful and smart and prudent and forward thinking and say, okay, if this particular piece of music is being lost, and the layperson is always right, do not discredit the layperson. Trust and believe it's the voice of the people that really matters. So, I mean, I may be a big chef, culinary expert, and I present some food. Somebody hire me. I qualified. But if the masses say, "Oh God, this ain't tastes good at all," what's my claim to fame? So
Right.
we must listen to the people.
The let me put you on the spot. We spoke with one music enthusiast, qualified guy, who said to us that he would like to know, when we've declared the steel pan the national instrument of Trinidad and Tobago, what does that really mean in our mind's eye? And further to that, he was saying that Panorama is a competition. Um, and the competition requires a standard and a steel band pleasing adjudicators in order to win that prize. So are you of the view that the product that is Panorama needs to be revisited at this stage, where the art that is music can come out uninhibited by what adjudicators want and what it takes to win the competition? Or are you of the view, alternatively, that we should have more pan shows outside of the Panorama season, where that artistic expression could come out uninhibited by what people think or what adjudicators think? Because we have a show, we perform, this is what Invaders is presenting, this is our art, and we hear from Phase 2, Renegades, Desperados, and the arrangers don't feel like, we hamstrung, there's an albatross around our neck that we have to follow a pathway and deliver on certain lines because we need the judges' approval.
Well, fortunately for me, unfortunately for some, I have a 360-degree view. So I don't believe that that you can only walk and not chew gum. I think we can do both. We can do both. And of course, the panoramas can be improved. And let's speak from a judging criteria. there should be a system in place to break the ties. There has been so many ties now. People are thinking about having stores and selling apparel, but because again, when you revisit the competition and you see three bands tied, you can say, you know what, yes, based on the scores they tied, but based on the general consensus of that panel, there was no way they should tie. And we must have a system um, eliminating the points, but one that prefers the position. So there may be a panel of 5 individuals where 3 of those individuals believe band A should win, and 2 individuals think that band B should win. But based on the numeric value of Judge 4 and 5 that favored band B, they end up winning the competition. That shouldn't be. We need that. I mean, I haven't heard of any fairer, more objective system where the will of the majority of the panel prevails. So it should not be. Yeah, it should not be based on a numeric value, but on the position and the general consensus of that panel.
So this is a very important point, and I'm glad, we're having a discussion about it. And we actually discussed this, I think it was last week or the week before, with Miss Vanessa Headley, who raised the same concern about ties. Well, as you remember, her band, Golden Hands, in the small band category, tied with another band first. Now, she was not complaining that they should have won, but she was making the same observation that you did, that there's so many ties. It's quite, well, first of all, I agree with you totally that it should be first about the ranking. This band is the best, second, third, fourth. And then the marks should reflect the ranking. I totally agree with you. But in the absence, as you say, with the current rules, in the absence of the judges being able to consult with each other and confer and discuss, we can't get a ranking, a consensus on ranking. The issue with marks being tied, well, I think Vanessa put it very clearly last week. You're marking on a scale of 0 to 100. But if you give one band, let's say 85, and you give another band 86, and you give another band 87, they're going to be ties. But if the judges felt that they had the freedom to use the entire range of marks, so a band will get 74, a band will get 83, a band will get 91. If you have enough width between your rankings, then it is less likely that you're going to get that many ties. Now, you might still end up with a tie, but I think the frequency of it will be less. But I think the issue is, and this was Ms. Headley explaining this, that the judges are each judging on the individual level in too narrow a range. And I don't know what your opinion is, but I think it doesn't have to be that narrow, because all bands are not equal in terms of the arrangement, the sound, the execution, the precision, the phrasing, the musical ideas. So, I think that's something that it's good that we're discussing it. I think it's an important discussion to be had. And I'm sure others have different points of view. But I agree with you 110%. It should be about ranking first. We agree this band was definitely the best. And then the marks should indicate, the marks should follow. So I'll tell you, I've judged a lot for the Trinidad and Tobago Music Festival. And when I listen to a class, I write a lot of comments as they're performing. Okay, let's say it's a vocal class, and I'm writing comments for each performer, but I don't put on any marks. But as we're going, I'm ranking them. I'm ranking them. So of course, the first person that sings, they win because that's only one. Now I hear the second person. Is the second person better than the first one or not as good? So if they're not as good, they're second. Then I hear the third person. I'm ranking them. They come in between number one and number two. So by the time the class is finished, I have my ranking already done. Now, of course, it's not as many people usually in a class as it is in Panorama. So this is where it gets really hard with Panorama. So you have to make copious notes, not on the comment sheet that the band leaders are going to get, but notes to yourself. Because when Pan Trinbago takes away that score sheet, you now, if you're going to be fair, your scale has been calibrated from that first mark that you put down. And so if you don't make a lot of notes to yourself, it will be very hard when you reach band number 12. Where do they rank in this? So it's an important discussion, I think, to be had. So thank you for bringing that up.
Gentlemen, we have about 2 minutes. So we,
You
Dr.
said-
Taylor, so you can
Let him
wrap
finish.
it up.
Let him finish his thought. He wants to speak, but
Yes.
no.
Yes. So let me quickly ask you. So they have the system of throwing out the highest and the lowest score. What do you think about that?
So I've been asked that question before, and I have very strong opinions about it. And I would say it like this: in the absence of a briefing with all the members of the panel before the competition starts, where you're going to calibrate the scoring, throwing out the highest score and the lowest score is not a good idea for this reason. If there's no discussion, right? And let's say I tend to be a little bit tough with the marking. All my scores are going to be on the lower end as compared to a judge who tends to be mark high. All their scores are going to be high. So then we run the risk of both my scores and their scores are thrown out because they're consistently low or high. So then what's the point of being on the panel if our voice essentially is eliminated? So this is where I think the answer to this is having a briefing with the panel. And here's how it should happen. At least this is one way it could happen. I don't know what you think. I'll throw it out to you. You get the panel in a room. You play a recording of something, a panorama arrangement. You don't tell them what band it is. And you say to the panel, or the panel is discussing amongst themselves, if we heard something like this, how would we score it? Let's discuss the arrangement. Let's discuss the phrasing. Let's discuss the execution, the precision. Let's discuss the performance, overall performance, impact. And then so every judge is kind of, and then we agree, okay, this is about an 84. Then every judge, we have now calibrated the scale. So if they go to Tobago and they hear a band, that scale, that calibrated scale is in their mind. But if you have different judges in each zone, right, and you have no calibration, or you have substitute judges coming in a zone, then you see where the problem comes in. So I think there's actually quite an easy fix to that. What do you think about that idea of calibration?
Well, I think calibration is certainly necessary. But okay, so really quickly, do you know why they throw out the highest and the lowest? I'm trying to.
Yes, well, what we were told, well, in the days when I did Panorama, we were told this is to eliminate bias. If somebody's biased towards a particular band, they will score them high because that's their band. So they will give them an unusually high score. But in my experience, I don't know the current judges, but when I did it, I would say every single member of that panel took it very seriously and they tried very hard to do their best. They may not have heard your melody embedded in the cello pan because of what was going on top of it, but everybody tried their best. I don't think people exhibit it. I've never seen an instance of it. And not even at music festival. I have never worked with another judge who I felt was being biased. In fact, they tend to err on the opposite end of the spectrum. If they know a particular choir, let's say that's performing a school choir, they will say, I recuse myself from this decision because I have a close relationship with that music teacher who's teaching there. And that's what tends to happen at music festival.
Okay.
Gentlemen, I want to thank you for the time that you spent with us, Mr. Herbert. It's been a pleasure seeing you and hearing from you again. We've touched on some areas here that I'm sure will make good material for.
Important conversations to be
Yes.
had. I mean, there's no easy solution for everything, but I think the more conversation and dialogue and people throw out ideas, what do you think of this? What if we did? We could make progress. We could make progress to ease the path for the players and the arrangers.
Most
and
definitely.
Most
definitely. Well, I would like to, okay, just before, I would like to invite the general public to please come down to the Shell Invaders Steel Orchestra at 147 Tragage Road. Come down this weekend, come down Friday. We have something called Storm. They practice where you can come in, you can sit down, you can have drinks, you can have eats, and you listen to the process, our drilling process. You will definitely hear the Panorama song in its complete version between the hours of, I say, 9 and 10, 9 and 10 and 30. So I'm taking this opportunity to invite you to come and hear the champion band.